Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I'm just sitting here drinking my morning coffee. About to cook my breakfast, eat some food, get some squats going, because I squat every day. Today I thought I would talk with you guys a little bit about, for more advanced lifters, because obviously novices this is a lot easier, balancing our short-term and long-term goals as far as our training, nutrition, things like body weight, body composition, all that stuff, and putting them into a workable paradigm and adjusting as we go of how to kind of prioritize these things. Because we're all going to have goals. And the thing is, almost none of us have just one goal with our fitness. Anyone who's serious enough about their training and fitness that they're going to be watching YouTube fitness channels, we usually have pretty complex goals, right? Pretty complex goals. And we'll sometimes have 4, 5, 6 different goals that we've set, whether they're short-term or long-term. And I think it's important for all of us to differentiate between how short-term versus long-term that goal is, because sometimes they will conflict with each other. They'll conflict with each other. And we'll use me as the example. I've set a bunch of long-term strength goals. I've also kind of set some body composition goals, right? Not necessarily body weight goals, but body composition goals. Which is going to be mostly weight related, because obviously I'm not ever going to put on another 20 pounds of muscle from where I am right now. Not feasible without blasting a bunch of gear. Not at my current size, not at my current age. But I can still gain some muscle. But changes in body composition are going to be, at this point, 90% weight based. Right? They're going to be 90% based on my scale weight. So you've got to look at those things and say, okay, how do we break these sort of things up? And those can be contradictory. I've personally set some really lofty, extremely lofty long-term strength goals. Now, losing body weight and gaining enormous amounts of strength, I mean, we're talking about I'm still wanting to put another 100 pounds on my squat. You know, like another 70 pounds or more on my bench press. Things like that. Those are lofty goals, particularly when you're advanced. Those are multi-year goals. So we've got to look at that from the perspective of how do we move towards those things. So we've got to start prioritizing them, number one. Number one, my strength goals are the highest priority. The body composition, number 2, behind it. So obviously what we would have to do when we look at that, say, well, you know, I don't want to lose strength, so I've got to cut slowly. Can I work towards the strength goals and the body composition goals concurrently? Sure. You just have to prioritize, meaning you have to accept that higher priority goals, you will put more energy into those, at least move towards them faster than lower priority goals. So I wouldn't just do a rapid cut. I'm not going to drop 20 pounds over the next 5 weeks trying to reach the body composition goal, because I have strength goals. So it means that has to go very, very slow, very slow. Like I've set a goal of getting to 15% body fat. I may not stop there, but that is a good, decent long-term goal from where I am. Because for an advanced lifter who wants to gain strength, to go from 23.7, which is my DEXA scan, down to 15, that's not something you're going to do in only 10 weeks and still get stronger. Not going to happen. That is a several-month goal, if not a 6-month-long goal, 6 or 7 months, 8 months maybe. So prioritizing those things. But then we have to break these things into short-term and long-term goals, meaning I've set a goal of reaching a 600-pound squat. I set that back when I was in the low 400s again, as far as rebuilding my squat. Well, that's really long-term. So we need to look at things in short-term. So in my case, and this is, again, you guys can do this your own way. You set short-term goals that'll get you closer to that goal. Because what happens is that when we set long-term goals, lofty goals, if we don't focus day to day on the short-term steps to get there, then what happens? We don't stay motivated. We need our short-term goals as milestones to help us reach those larger goals. Now, in the case of this, I've said as a short-term, I want to get to where I squat 500 every day. I had originally set a different goal to get there, and in retrospect, I realized that was not the best goal to help me get to where I want to go. It had been something like to get a 500 beltless pause squat. Well, is focusing on a 500 beltless pause squat really useful towards my long-term goal of getting a 600 squat in a belt without a pause? Maybe it could be an intermediate step, but a better one would be what's a daily training goal. training in a similar technique to what I want to hit with the long-term goal with a daily training number, that's a good short-term goal towards reaching it. That's a good, more intermediate step. And so I set the goal of getting to a 500-pound squat every day. But here's the thing. When we set our short-term goals, we also have to look at those from the perspective of even a short-term goal could be a several-month goal, right? It could be a several-month-long goal. We don't want to, particularly the more advanced we get, we don't want to try to push to reach that goal much faster than is feasible and end up hurting ourselves or end up burning out. So even then, I'm coasting at this point. A lot of people are like, you could hit 500 squat now. I absolutely could if I just took a few days off from squatting. But is that going to help me reach even my short-term goal? No, that's not. My short-term goal isn't 500 max. It's to get 500 as a daily training squat. So we need to look at that from that perspective and ask ourselves, are our milestones that we set for short-term goals, are they beneficial to the long term, or are they there to stroke our ego? Because just getting to a 500 max, that would be ego stroking towards getting to a 600 max. Working on what can I do, what goals do I need to reach in my everyday training. And that, I think, is where we need to really look at things like short-term strength and performance goals. Where do I need to be with my training itself to reach that goal versus what performance goal do I need as an absolute test? Because there's a difference between demonstrating strength and building strength. So again, what I would advise people is that even if you're going to work towards say a training max, and I don't care whether it's that or it's a rep max on the bench press or something with your run or your jumps or whatever else, it's better if we look at our short-term goals instead of just milestones, because a lot of times we do that. I have a tendency to do that historically, and I think that's normal human nature, to step back and say, okay, well, if I just reach this goal as a performance-based display of performance, then that's a milestone to get there. But that's a milestone that we set that's just for our ego. Our ego in the short term, rather than is that goal itself, is reaching that goal itself going to be beneficial, a beneficial stepping stone. So no, I mean, let's step back and say, what do I need to do as a milestone in my training? Not my display of strength, but my building of strength. And so that's what I've set, is to have the work capacity and strength on the squat to do my 500 as a daily training minimum. All right, now that is a far more useful step. Or it could be, my goal would be to reach whatever, 3 reps with a certain amount of weight without any of them grinding. Because we'll accept with a max, grinding on a max, taking 4 or 5 seconds, 6 seconds to lock out a weight. That's a goal weight. We'll accept that. That's totally acceptable as a display of strength. Not a good way to build strength. So looking at it from that perspective can be helpful. And sometimes we have to accept that body composition goals on occasion might require us to move in the other direction. Maybe you have a body composition goal that requires you to gain a certain amount of muscle mass. Well, if you have a certain amount of muscle mass you want to gain, and you have a certain body fat you want to reach, you still might be required to bulk at some point still. Even as intermediate and advanced lifters, you might have to bulk and gain a few pounds of body fat at a certain point to push beyond a plateau as far as size and strength goes. And you very well are probably going to have to do that, depending upon how much muscle it is that you plan on gaining over the next number of years. So in that case, again, you've got to balance a short-term with a long-term goal and look at it in that perspective. And then other times, our other mini goals will have to be set aside. For example, for me, I have contested more competitive lifts that I've set goals on, and then I had set other goals, shorter-term goals with non-competitive lifts. Like, for example, me for my chin-up. Well, my chin-up started interfering again with the connective tissue here, interfering with my ability to squat without pain. Well, feeling pain every time I squat obviously isn't conducive to any of my goals. So at a certain point, I had to sit back and say, okay, the chin-up is a less important goal than the squat goal. It really is. I'm going to have to stop doing the chin-ups and start doing shoulder mobility work, bicep work, to work on all the connective tissue more, stretching and moving all of this area, cleaning up my squat technique and setting aside the less important goal of the chin-up for the short-term and long-term goals on the squat and overall strength, right? And there are times that we have to do that. And here's what you have to understand. When you set a number of goals, when you're balancing them out, you're going to have to prioritize. And there are times to where you are going to have to either permanently, or on the chin-up probably temporarily set aside that less important goal when it starts to interfere with your primary goals, and we need to be thoughtful in our approach to all of this. And again, this is just kind of giving people ideas of ways to organize this stuff as we go, and how to set meaningful goals towards our long-term goals in the short term. How to use these short-term steps not just as milestones towards it, or as a percentage towards it, but can we set short-term goals that will improve our ability to reach the long-term goal, and sequentially. And again, it's just trying to look at it from that perspective, and not being upset when your goals start to conflict, rather than get upset or conflicted or get stressed about when any of your goals start interfering with each other, of making a decision without questioning that decision of where to prioritize that then, and when to set aside certain other goals for the bigger picture without letting it bother you. In other words, for example, for me, and a few people said, oh my God, the chin-up thing. They even in the comments, they're like, oh, you're going to quit on that. Yep. For now, doesn't mean long term. I can always pick it back up. I mean, as long as my back and biceps get stronger and I lose body weight, my chin-up's going to go up. Not that worried. And in the meantime, since it's interfering, of course, you just set it to the side and say it's not important. And when you decide it is no longer important because the longer term goals and the bigger goals take priority over that, you have to be confident in that decision that you made, and you can't let it conflict you, because stress, unneeded stress, will interfere with any of your fitness related goals, performance related, body composition, all of that. So you can't let yourself get stressed about that. You have to look at it and just let it go. It's basically making an executive decision. So those are ways, again, that you can look at it. And these are ways that we approach each of those things in the short term and the long term. And then again, back to another point of when little small things get in the way, adjusting. Just learning to adjust and finding ways around it. I mean, the perfect example in my case, and again, we can use this as learning tools. We can use these as learning tools to help us problem solve. Again, perfect example. Chin-ups, shoulder mobility, the way that I'm adjusting my grip, which all came back to why was I doing my grip and everything a certain way, to try to get rid of discomfort due to my lack of mobility and the bicep inflammation from the old injury, and the weighted chin-ups. Getting strong really fast on the weighted chin-ups, putting a heavy focus on them, inflamed that old injury and that scar tissue. So when you say, okay, we set that to the side and we work on the mobility instead, and we work on cleaning up the squat technique and the grip, so that all of that goes away, so that we can keep moving forward without missing a beat. So again, it's just about organizing, prioritizing, problem solving, learning when to set aside certain goals for the bigger picture, and balancing your short-term and your long-term goals. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.